point here, Anna, to ask you about the homeschooling, because it's a genuine question that I have, and perhaps I just the perhaps the biggest misconception I have here is that maybe socialization and being friendly with other people maybe goes down with homeschooling. I have no idea. I have also read that skimmed through that homeschooling actually improves in intelligence and all of those ideas. So would you care to share a bit your thoughts on homeschooling with us?
Yeah, I love that you asked that, because that is a very common misconception. And you need to understand that homeschooling has been around for a long time, but it looks very, very different for different people and different families, right? So I always talk about, there's a spectrum when it comes to education. Far on the left, all the way to the left, you have the traditional school system. All the way to the right, you have, homeschooling. Now, in the middle, you have a bunch of different options. More towards the homeschooling side, you have world schooling, which is kind of, a little bit of what I did, but at the same time, not that much, because I actually went to physical schools. But then after, my mom would do a lot of world schooling, which is just learning from your environment in all these different countries. You have unschooling, which is kind of like super to the extreme, where parents are like, kids are the directors and constructors of their own knowledge. They can learn or not learn about whatever they want. They can do whatever. So it's like completely unstructured. And I think that, I have my thoughts on that. I think that there's some positive things about it. I think that there is a role for an adult for every kid, and we can talk about that. And then you have like a bunch of other self-directed communities in the middle. You have a mix and match where you send kids to maybe like some forest schools or some places or micro schools for a few days a week, for a few hours. And then kids have the rest of the day to engage in other things. There's online learning. There's a bunch of options. But homeschooling, it depends on how you do it, right? Like some parents actually do traditional schooling, but at home with your parent. And so I'm not that much in favor for that, because, and again, that's sort of what comes to mind for a lot of people when they think about homeschooling. And that's why they say, oh, the social aspect, or this is completely undoable. I could not teach my child all the subjects. I'm not an expert. I'm not a teacher. Da, 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 da. So that's not the kind of homeschooling that I advocate for, although it may work for some families, totally fine. But I think that that's where you would, get this notion of, oh, like the social aspect. But really, when you think about like homeschooling done right, kids are learning either from apps or from a parent or from a teacher that comes to your home, or in a little environment with other kids for a few hours a day. And then that opens up the rest of the day for them to actually be part of society and enroll in different things and interact with adults and interact with children different ages. So if you think about it, when in the real world do you only interact with people your age? The only place I can think about is school, when you're in grades with only people your age. To me, that's not the real way to socialize. But yet parents don't question that. They question the homeschoolers that are actually socializing in a way that resembles the way that we do it in real life, right? They get their learning out of the way pretty quickly, and then they have the rest of the day to be part of society, right? They're actually socializing the way that we should be socializing. The way that we do it in school doesn't make sense to me. Like only with peers your age in this, room, 24 kids for a whole year. Like what? Like no, right? And so it really depends on how you do it. But what I love about homeschooling is that it's actually really flexible. So you get to, and that's sort of like the hype of it. And a lot of people opt for homeschooling because you get to decide as a parent and as a family how you want to do it, right? And of course, there's some different states and different places that have different restrictions in terms of the things that you need to submit to appear, what is your kid learning about and this and that. But in general, it tends to be very flexible. And so you can decide, like, I don't know if you've read the 4-Hour Workbook of Tim Ferriss, or like this whole idea that, it's not true that we are productively working from 8 to 5, no, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I structure my days in like 3 hours of power work, and I get so much done. And then I have the rest of the day to actually do other things, be with my kid and just do whatever it is that I want to do. And so I think it's the same for children. It's not true. And again, I was a teacher in many schools and I was a student of many schools. It's not true that we are learning from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's simply BS, right? And there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of wasted time, and time that we can give back to kids, right? Time of their childhood that we can gift them back if we're able to actually focus on the academic stuff in shorter span and more effective way, which is, a lot of homeschoolers have been really good at this, so that then they can free up the rest of their time to do other stuff. Now, of course, there are different ways to do this. There are lots of like, oh, but what if, I'm not an expert, I'm not this, I'm not that. I think technology is going to play a bigger role going forward when it comes to this. So at Synthesis, which is the education company that I'm part of, and I know we're not the only ones coming up with this, but it's actually the best one that I've seen so far in terms of resembling a human. But we're coming up with this like one-on-one tutor, this digital tutor, which, by the way, one-on-one tutoring has been known for years that it's the best way to learn. That's Aristotle's like taught Alexander the Great one-on-one. Like this is kind of like the examples that we have. But it's just not physically doable. But if you use technology and you leverage technology and you're able to, because the human element is super important when it comes to teaching and learning. Kids need to know that there's a caring adult on the other side that wants you to learn in order to engage in the process. So we've been able to really add that human component to this one-on-one tutor, and resembling on real teachers in the real world, to teach you the academic subjects in a really effective way, in a way that is engaging and in a short span, so that you cover that and you actually perform really well on those subjects, so that if you want to go to college later, or you want to take the SAT, or you can do that and you'll excel. And then that frees up the rest of your day for you to do whatever it is that you want. So I think that a lot of homeschoolers and micro schools and a lot of the alternative education space is going to adopt this kind of technology to cover those hard academics that parents claim that they're not experts on, and that, of course, everyone has to be exposed to. And we actually see opportunities for them to for these tutors and for this technology to be part of classrooms as well. I'm not as focused on that, because I'm a big believer that you can't really reform or transform the system. I think you really have to start something new, because of a lot of the bureaucracies and a lot of the things that are holding this, institution back. But for those that are interested in improving the actual system, a lot of these technologies, I think, will also make a difference. So that's sort of like where we're heading, hopefully.